In early summer 2025, a crisis erupted along the world's longest undefended border, not with weapons but with tariffs and political brinkmanship. The United States and Canada, longtime allies, suddenly found themselves at odds, culminating in the closure of the Alaska Highway. This vital route, severed in response to aggressive new American tariffs, left Alaska isolated and its people facing uncertainty. The closure triggered a domino effect, impacting businesses in Seattle, families in Fairbanks, and even markets overseas. It was a stark reminder of how fragile global connections can be. The dispute became a symbol of rising protectionism and nationalism worldwide, challenging decades of international cooperation. For weeks, the world watched as two friendly neighbors engaged in a high-stakes standoff, with millions affected. From Washington, D.C. to small border towns, the impact was immediate and profound. This analysis will take you inside the conflict, exploring its history, the key players, and the real-world consequences. Let's uncover the lessons from a crisis that brought North America to the brink. To grasp the 2025 closure's impact, we must revisit the Alaska Highway's origins. Built during World War II, the ALCAN was a joint U.S. Canada effort to defend Alaska from potential invasion. Over 10,000 U.S. soldiers and thousands of Canadian workers braved brutal conditions to carve a 300-mile route through wilderness in just 8 months. The highway became a symbol of wartime alliance and later a lifeline for peace and commerce. After the war, it transformed Alaska from a remote outpost into an integrated part of North America. The 1977 treaty guaranteed American transit rights, cementing the highway's role as Alaska's economic artery. Though the treaty allowed for closures in extreme cases, few imagined it would ever be used in a trade dispute. The highway's closure in 2025 was not just a logistical nightmare, it was a psychological shock, severing a bond forged in war and peace. It exposed how quickly stability can unravel when trust between nations falters. The ALCAN story is a reminder: infrastructure is more than concrete and asphalt. It's a promise. In 2025, that promise was broken. The crisis ignited on May 24, 2025, when former President Trump, campaigning on economic nationalism, slapped heavy tariffs on Canadian lumber and maple syrup. Ottawa was blindsided. Prime Minister Trudeau's government condemned the move as illegal. British Columbia's Premier Dana Sharma retaliated by suspending all U.S.-bound commercial traffic on the Alaska Highway through her province. Invoking the 1977 treaty's public order clause, she argued the tariffs threatened provincial stability. On June 1st, barriers went up. U.S. commercial trucks were turned away, choking off Alaska's main supply line. The highway, once a symbol of unity, became a weapon in a trade war. As if politics weren't enough, wildfires erupted in northern British Columbia, forcing unpredictable closures for everyone. Alaska's lifeline was blocked by both policy and nature. Panic and uncertainty spread as the state faced isolation. The perfect storm of political and natural disaster left Alaska in peril. The standoff showed how quickly economic disputes can escalate into full-blown crises. The border, once invisible, became a hard line overnight. The consequences were immediate and severe. The Alaska Highway isn't just a road, it's Alaska's economic lifeline. Over 75% of the state's goods, from groceries to medical supplies, travel this route. Its closure halted billions in trade, with perishable foods and vital medicines stranded. Alaska's short construction season was threatened as building materials ran out. Every day the highway stayed closed, millions were lost. Alternative routes, by sea or air, were too slow and costly for most goods. Supermarket shelves emptied, gas stations worried about fuel, and businesses faced shutdowns. The ripple effects hit every sector, from tourism to construction. The crisis exposed Alaska's vulnerability. Without the highway, the state's economy grinds to a halt. The numbers tell the story. This was an economic emergency. The closure's impact was swift, deep, and far-reaching. Beyond economics, the closure hit people hardest in small border towns and across Alaska. Businesses reliant on cross-border traffic, cafes, motels, gas stations, saw revenues plummet overnight. Panic buying swept Alaska, emptying shelves and fueling anxiety. Truck drivers were stranded, losing income as perishable goods spoiled. Families were separated and cross-border tourism vanished. Community events celebrating U.S. Canada friendship were canceled, fraying social ties. The closure turned neighbors into adversaries in a conflict they didn't choose. Online frustration and mistrust grew, eroding decades of goodwill. The psychological blow was profound. Alaskans felt cut off and vulnerable. The crisis showed how political decisions can fracture communities in an instant. The human cost was real, immediate, and lasting. The world watched the U.S. Canada standoff with shock and concern. The European Union urged de-escalation, fearing the conflict would embolden global protectionism. China and Russia seized the moment, using the dispute as propaganda to question Western reliability. International media turned the regional crisis into global headlines. Stranded trucks, empty shelves, fiery press conferences. The story became a symbol of how quickly alliances can fracture. Public reaction was disbelief. Few imagined the U.S. and Canada could clash so bitterly. Social media buzzed with calls for a return to normalcy. The crisis damaged the image of the U.S.-Canada partnership on the world stage. The pressure to resolve the standoff mounted as the world watched. Experts in trade and diplomacy were quick to criticize the U.S. tariffs, calling them economically self-defeating. Dr. Emily Vance of the Peterson Institute warned the tariffs would raise prices for Americans and provoke retaliation. Diplomats lamented the breakdown in communication, noting the U.S. and Canada usually resolve disputes quietly. The use of the Alaska Highway as leverage was seen as a dangerous escalation. Legal scholars debated British Columbia's closure, arguing it stretched the 1977 treaty's intent and set a risky precedent. Professor Michael Chen of Harvard cautioned that weaponizing infrastructure undermines cross-border stability. Some experts acknowledged long-standing trade irritants, suggesting the crisis was a wake-up call for reform. The consensus: both nations needed to modernize dispute resolution and return to dialogue. The crisis exposed vulnerabilities but also opportunities for smarter cooperation. The lesson was clear: dialogue, not confrontation, is the only way forward. After weeks of mounting pressure, back-channeled diplomacy finally broke the deadlock. U.S. governors from northern states demanded action, shifting the political calculus. In mid-June, a deal was struck. The U.S. suspended tariffs, and Canada reopened the highway. Relief convoys rushed supplies north, and emergency aid flowed to affected communities. The immediate crisis eased, but the scars remained. Calls grew for a permanent North American arbitration panel to prevent future escalations. The focus shifted to rebuilding trust. Local initiatives, cross-border events, and buy local campaigns aimed to heal divisions. The crisis forced both nations to reflect on the value of partnership. Recovery would be slow, requiring sustained commitment from leaders and citizens. The events of 2025 were a wake-up call. Stability can't be taken for granted. The road to recovery was just beginning. The 2025 standoff offers urgent lessons. Protectionism and tariffs inflict collateral damage, harming citizens and allies alike. The crisis proved that cooperation, not conflict, is the key to prosperity. International agreements are the guardrails of stability. Ignoring them erodes global order. The Alaska Highway Treaty's use as a bargaining chip was a dangerous precedent. Diplomacy isn't just for politicians. Public pressure and civic engagement helped end the crisis. The future depends on informed citizens demanding sensible solutions. The Alaska Highway closure is a call for empathy and smarter diplomacy. The U.S.-Canada partnership is precious and must be protected. The road ahead is one we must travel together.